Based on the Nigerian constitution, there are people being nominated to be in a particular position based on experience, while some are there based on their qualities in the office. Now, as Public Finance Officer is concerned, in line with Financial Responsibility Act, in line with Fiscal Financial Finance Act, in line with Nigerian Constitution, we can say that public finance officers are Minister of Finance, Accountant General of the Federation, Accounting Officer, Sub-Account Officer. We also have what we call Revenue Collector Officer. We have Imprest Holder Officer. We have Officer in charge of vote book. Auditor General will have been listed as part of this, but his own office is being separated from those who are handle finance or who are there to manage the finance record, but is there to investigate and examine what people or the people in charge of finance has done. Are we together? Now, let's now pick it. Who is Minister of Finance? What are the roles to be played by the Minister of Finance? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The question is, who is Minister of Finance? What are the roles to be played by the Minister of Finance? If no idea. Based on the Nigerian Constitution, Minister of Finance is an officer charged with the responsibility of managing the finance affairs of a nation, who is being appointed by the president, approved by the National Assembly. He or she is there on a political ground, not a permanent officer. After 4 years of being appointed to manage the office, then the person that appointed him or her, immediately the person is going, that particular officer is also going with that particular administration. That is why they don't specifically put him or her as part of the public finance officer. But you cannot exempt his role from the finance officer based on what he or she is meant to be doing if being appointed. Now, looking at it from the Nigerian records, we have in the past two major and the best Minister of Finance as Nigeria Constitution is concerned. The best two as Nigeria Constitution or Nigeria financial historical history is concerned, that they have played the major role in the Nigerian economy. Can you tell me those two? Any idea? Any idea at all? Do you have idea of Awolowo? Hello? Do you have idea of Obafemi Awolowo? Obafemi Awolowo was once appointed as Minister of Finance during the era of Gowon. This so-called person played a major role in the Nigerian economy. When he was there as Minister of Finance, Nigeria never experienced any national debt. We are not owing any nation any money. Rather, he introduced into the system what we call counter trade, where we exchange goods for goods and service for service that required measurement or that involves measurement or using a measuring instrument or device, compared to trade by barter that has no specific means of measuring goods for goods and service for service. Aside that, Okonjo-Iweala in 1999, during the Obasanjo era, when Obasanjo was the Nigerian president, Okonjo-Iweala also played a major role based on her experience, where he worked towards it and achieved it by canceling what Nigerian debt in the World Bank and in IMF, based on experience. Based on experience. At that particular point in time, Okonjo-Iweala played a major role in the Nigerian finance. And he worked towards achieving a means of controlling the economic system in a positive way, working together with CBN governor at that particular point in time. That was who was the head of what? Who was the CBN governor at that particular point in time? Charles Soludo. That was the person that introduced what we call banking recapitalization from 2 billion naira to 25 billion. That particular period, Nigeria will have sink in terms of finance when it comes to financial houses. But he re-strategized by foreseeing the future that can harm the nation economically and financially. Then things went smoothly during their era. Compared to the present situation that Nigeria found itself or found herself. Let's look at what the material is talking about. In accordance with the government financial regulation, the Accountant General of the Federation is the chief accounting officer of the receipt and payment of the Federation, saddles with responsibility of general supervision of accounting of all ministries and extra-ministerial departments, and the preparation of annual financial statements of the nation as may be required by the Honorable Minister of Finance. He or she representative shall assess any responsibility, any reasonable time to all documents. Now, what are we trying to achieve here? Information recorded that are needed for the preparation of account of every ministry and extra-ministerial department. Fine. Now, what we are telling you is this. The Honorable Minister of Finance is also an officer as public finance is concerned, but he or she is there on political ground compared to Accountant General that is there to manage the general finance affair. But Minister of Finance is a person appointed on political ground to oversee the financial affairs of the nation. What are the roles and responsibilities of Minister of Finance? We said it, that is there to oversee the streams of income or revenue of the nation. Is there to advise the government on financial matters. Is there to advise the government on investments matter. Is also there to advise the government on foreign exchange matter. Is there to advise the government on budget preparation. We also have Minister of Budget, but he's also there to contribute his own quota. That is the role Minister of Finance is meant to play. Accountant General will report to the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance will report to the President. Accountant General will report to the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance will report to the President. Indirectly, we always have in each ministry head of what ministry that they call permanent secretary. You can never hear permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. The person that head Ministry of Finance, the head of Ministry of Finance is the Accountant General of the Federation. We'll discuss that when we get to where we are going. That is the role to be played by the Accountant General, by the Minister of Finance, who is Accountant General of the Federation. Any question relating to Minister of Finance, as we have explained so far? I want to move to the next one. Any question as regards to the role played by the Minister of Finance? Hello?
We can hear you, sir. I have no question.
Now, let's move down to the next one. Accountant General of the Federation. Who is the Accountant General of the Federation? Accountant General of the Federation is an officer. Is an officer charged with responsibility. An officer charged with responsibility. An officer charged with responsibility of the nation, and also to prepare the financial report or financial statements of the nation. The receipt and payment of the entire nation. Who is responsible? The Accountant General. This so-called officer is there to manage the receipt and payment, is there to manage the account of all the ministries as the entire nation is concerned. As the entire nation is concerned. This officer can visit any ministry requesting for their what? Their record, financial record. Based on the Constitution. Nobody can stop him not to come in. If by the Constitution, the power given to that particular officer has the authority to check any ministry based on their records. Why are we having challenges in the Nigerian system? If truly those people appointed to manage the ministry are there on merit. But the Nigerian system, there is no meritocracy. The system is not poor to the essence that they don't allow people to do their work the way the Constitution spelled it out. Constitution make it clear to us that there are power and duty given to the Accountant General based on the Government Financial Regulation Act 106, 2009. The Accountant General of the Federation has the following duty. 1, power to assess, power of access to the book, power of access to books and records of all ministries at any reasonable time. Any reasonable time simply means he can go into any ministry to make what? To check their books. He can go to the ministry without telling them Reasonable time don't give you a specific time that I'm coming. I don't need to notify you that I'm on my way coming to your office to come and check your record so you can tidy up your books. No. The power given to him can allow him to visit the ministry and ask for their record, their books of accounts. The second power to request for information and explanation necessary for his duty at any point in time. The next one, power to carry out specific or ad hoc investigation at any ministry. If they notice there is a fraud in the system, he can put in place what we call ad hoc investigation. The Financial Regulation Act of the Nigerian government also gave us some functions, some roles to be played by the Accountant General, apart from the power. What are the power? What are the functions given to this so-called officer? Number one, serve as the chief account officer for the receipts and payment of the government of the Federation. Number two, supervises the account of the federal ministry, federal ministries, extra-ministerial offices, and other arms of government. What do we mean in that situation? Supervise the account of the federal ministries, extra ministerial offices. That is, we have extra ministerial department of federal pay offices. That's what we call federal pay offices. Federal pay offices. And other arms of government, other arms of government. What are the other arms of government that he can also dare to supervise the account? What are the other arms of government? What are the other arms of government? I'm asking.
Local and state governments.
No.
Legislative, executive, and judiciary arms.
Those are the tiers of government. Other arms of government, the one that they are referring to is executive. But we have the legislative arms, yes, and the judiciary. They are also there to check their records. They are there to check their books of accounts. Number three, collect, prepare, publish statutory financial statement of the federal government and other statements of account required by the minister, by the general. Now, who is the boss to the accountant general? Look at that word, function 3. Collect, prepare, publish statutory financial statement of the federal government and any other statement of account required by the Minister of Finance. Who is the boss?
Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance is there to report to the Minister of Finance. Number 4, manage federal government investment. Manage federal government investment. Is there to manage federal government investment. To maintain and operate the account of the Consolidated Revenue Fund, Development Fund account, Contingency Fund account, and other public funds and provided cash backing for the operation of the. When we look at what we are saying here, the question I'm expecting you should ask me question that what do you mean by consolidated revenue fund account, federal development fund account, contingency fund account? They are separate to be put in place by the government, by the Accountant General of the Federation. All these accounts are stated, spelled out in the Constitution for a particular purpose. Aside managing those accounts, it's also there to manage the Federation account. Consider revenue fund account and Federation account are not the same thing. Consider revenue fund account, federal government, where income and expenditure are being recorded, are being what? Stated. In order to determine the surplus or deficit. It is an account prepared by the federal government to record, to monitor the income and expenditure of a particular period. Why Federation account is the account put in place for recording the revenue that is meant to be shared by the 3 tiers of government. Revenue that is meant to be shared by the 3 tiers of government. There are lines of revenue that are meant to be paid to the Federation account. There are lines of revenue that are meant to be paid into the Consolidation Revenue Fund account, but they are not the same thing. Any question? Aside that, we also have what we call established and supervised federal pay offices in each state of the Federation. There are states where there are no ministry. What they will put in place there is federal pay offices. States where there are no ministries, they will put in place what we call federal pay offices. This so-called Accountant General of the Federation is also meant to manage the financial affairs of those offices, monitoring their records, organizing their books for him or her to prepare the accounts. The next one, establish and conduct routine and in-depth inspection of books of accounts of the federal ministries, extra-ministerial offices, and other arms of government. He can go in there and check their books. He can inspect what they have done. He can examine their records, whether they are doing in line with what he has said based on the Constitution or not. Also to ensure compliance with the rules, regulations, and policy decision of the federal government. Approve and ensure compliance with the accounting code, internal audit guides, and stock verification manual of the federal ministries, extra-ministerial offices. What we are saying is that it's also there to ensure high level of compliance. Question to the class now is that what is internal control? What is internal control? Any idea? Robert, Esther, what is internal control? Samuel, Taylor, Adenike, what is internal control? All of you always say it, internal control, internal control. What is internal control?
I would like to give it a try.
Okay.
They are like policies that are enacted that ensure that the organization is running smoothly. And these are the things that the controller or the minister of the auditor general, accountant general ensure compliance of how finances are being used, and it's just generally a policy document that is running the organization. That's a little clue I could give.
Okay. Thank you. Any idea?
I also think there are measures put in place to checkmate the activities of a particular department or a group of people.
Okay. Simply means internal control can be looking into in terms of the policy, the principles, the norms, the rules, regulations that are put in place to ensure that things are done in a normal way in order to manage the public assets, in order to manage the risk assets of an organization, in order to reduce the high level of fraud, in order to eliminate any such of fraud, in order to reduce mistake or errors. What are these control? What are they? You have given us the meaning, fine, no problem. I agree with all of you, what all of you have said in terms of the control put in place, various strategies set in order to be able to get the revenue that are meant to be reported, in order to be able to control the expenditure, no problem, in order to ensure there is a high level of compliance in every organization, in terms of the recording system, in terms of the accounting system put in place. But what are these internal control in terms of various components to be taken into consideration?
If I may say, it could be signatory to the account. It could be a control measure. Knowing who is
what do you say?
Signatory to accounts could be a measure of control.
Signatory to account. Wow. That one fall under one of the internal control. One of the internal control. It is not that name given to that. Any idea again?
Also say another idea is should I say procedures for procurement? How do I put it now? Like what and what should be put in place before procurement is made? Who and who goes through the documents? Who gives approval? Something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. By experience and what we have read so far in the book, the first thing they will look into is organization. Organization. For any internal control to be put in place, there must be organization and hierarchy. Procedure needs to be put in place. The next one is authorization. Instead of saying approval, we have what we call authorization and approval. Authorization and approval. Then we have what we call segregation of duty. Segregation of duty. Segregation of duty. We have what we call management control. Management control. We have what we call physical control. Physical control. We have what we call personnel control. Personnel control. We have what we call arithmetic and accuracy control. How many have we made mention of? Did you take note of what we are saying? Organizational control. We have organizational control. Authorization. We have segregation of duty.
Personnel
control. We have what we call physical control. We have what we call management control. We have what we call arithmetic and accuracy control. All these are various controls to be put in place. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's move to the next level. We also have here what we refer to as investigation cases. Investigate cases of fraud, loss of fund, asset and stock items, and other financial practices in ministry and extra-ministerial offices and other arms of government. If you notice that there is a fraud, he can investigate that. He can examine what has caused that particular problem. What can we do for such not to reoccur again? But Nigerian case study is abnormal. Even though all these are in our constitution, are we practicing it? Even the financial what? The Accountant General of the Federation, as Nigerian system is concerned, is also a thief. Why is it possible for thief to be catching thief? At the end of the day, they will both sit down and strategize on how to steal the money. Aside that, provide financial guidelines through the issuance of Treasury circular. You know, in the last class, we made mention of circular. They use circular to pass messages across to the ministries. But within the industry, department to department, they use what? Gazettes. Aside that, supervise and control the computerization of accounting system. What they are telling us here is that it's also there to put in place what? Accounting system in each ministry. As is there to work on internal control, it's also there to work on the accounting system of each ministry, extra-ministerial department, and other agencies or arms of government. Carry out the revenue monitoring and what? Expenditure what? Monitoring. Aside that, issues of financial approved form for treasury number. We discuss that as we are going. There's what we call treasury number. As time goes on, you will see what we are talking about by what we mean by treasury number. In all ministries, extra-ministerial offices or departments and other arms of government to ensure uniformity. It's also there to formulate accounting policy, servicing of the national debt. Is that clear? Organized training of accounts and internal audit personnel in all federal ministry and extra-ministerial departments. All these are meant to be done by the Accountant General of the Federation. Ask question before we move to the next one, because there are still many. Ask question. Absent of no question, we move to the next stage. What's the next stage? Accounting officer. Who is account officer? Who is account officer in your company? Who is account officer in local government? Who is in the state? Who is account officer of the ministry? Who is account officer of Nigeria? Let me start with what? Who is account officer in Nigeria here? Who is the account officer in Nigeria? Nigeria account officer. Please say something. Feel free. You are free to talk.
Can I say the president?
The president. The account officer, accounting officer as Nigeria is concerned, is the president. In the state, who is the account officer in the state? Governor.
Governor.
In the local government, who is the account officer?
The chairman.
In the ministry, who is the account officer in the ministry? That is the permanent secretary. Permanent secretary. The head of the ministry is referred to as what? Permanent secretary, PS. Is the head, is the account officer of that ministry. Is there to tell us what is happening in that ministry. Is there to tell us how they have managed the fund in the ministry. Is there to tell us what is the expenditure of the ministries look like. That is why he or she is being put in that position based on experience. He rose to that position through what? Promotion, not by appointment. He is not there on political ground. He has been in the system. It is not a commissioner. Commissioner is the head of the what? He is the head of the permanent secretary. Fine. Based on political ground. Who is there to be reporting to who? To that particular person called the governor. That particular person called the president. Minister of what? Finance will report to the president in each of the ministry. But that ministry is meant to be headed by who? By the permanent secretary or the account officer. What does our constitution says? In accordance with the government financial regulations, account officers are the permanent secretaries of the ministries and the head of the ministerial department. They are saddled with the responsibility of day-to-day financial affairs of the ministry and the ministerial department. Any question?
No, sir.
That is what the Constitution stated as the role of the accounting officer. Now, looking at this so-called officer, what are the roles to be played? The function of this particular officer. They said the term accounting officer means permanent secretary of the ministry or head of the extra-ministerial offices and other arms of government, who is in full control of and is responsible for human, material, and financial resources which are critical inputs of the management of the organization. What we're saying here is that he is responsible for both financial and non-financial activity of that ministry. That's the first part. The second part also explains to us other roles that is also meant to be played. Accounting officer shall, one, be responsible for safeguarding of the public fund. Is there to what? To safeguard the public fund. And the regulatory and preparatory of the expenditure under his control. Is there to monitor the what? The revenue. Also there to look into the what? Public expenditure under his control or our control. Observe and complies with fully and the checking and balancing, check and balance, spelled out of the existing financial regulation, which the government govern the receipt and disbursement of public funds. What we are saying, all those ones, they are what? Jargons. They are English. is there to manage the receipt and payment of the ministry, not of the operation of the what? Ministry. This so-called what? Account officer called what? The head of what? Ministry, permanent secretary, is there to manage the receipt and payment of the ministry. And other related resources entrusted is here. In any way that any error occur in the ministry is there to be what? Is there to be liable for any issue in each ministry. Are you all with me? Note
Yes,
that
sir.
his accountability does not case by the virtue of his leaving the office. That may be called upon at any time for his pleasure as accounting officer. Leaving the office does not end it there. If they notice anything happen in the future, they will summon him back to the office. Being account officer, former account officer of that what? Ministry, to come and solve the problem. That is why most of the permanent secretary, or let's say past permanent secretary, they are at times, they look at them as consultants to the ministry in the future. They call them to come and look at it. What can we do to solve the problem? What are the functions of this accounting officer? One, now you can see when we are looking at what Accountant General of the Federation is there to do this, is there to do this, he must do this, he must engage this. But when it comes to what? Ministry, those head of ministry, they are only there to ensure. They are only there to ensure. Let's look at it. Number one, ensure that proper budgetary and accounting system are established and maintained to enhance internal control, accountability, and transparency. Let me ask a question here. What is accountability? What is transparency? We've talked about what? Internal control. Accountability means what? What is accountability? People are not answering you.
Okay, let me just give a clue. I think accountability is ability to come to defend what has been done. Just like a defense, to account for what has been done.
What has happened?
What has that?
To
What has
defend
happened?
it.
Yes.
Do you agree with him? The House, do you agree with him? Okay. When we say accountability, you are providing facts based on what has happened. You are telling us, giving all the details of the transaction that has happened. You are showing the kind of person you are in terms of integrity. Showing that you are free from error or mistake of you are even free from fraud. You don't steal their money. Which now lead us to what we call transparency. That no, this is what full what transparency. You really show that you are very, very what plain. Number 2, ensure that the essential management control tools are put in place to minimize waste and fraud. You are meant to provide all the necessary what tools required in that ministry, being the head of that ministry, to ensure that the ministry is what is at work. The ministry is functioning. The next one, rendering monthly and other financial accounting returns and transcripts to the Accountant General of the Federation required by the financial regulations. This one is just a merely English. You need to understand what they are talking about. It is the duty of the head of the ministry, called what permanent secretary, to make sure he provides details of what details accounting record on a monthly basis with the means of transcript. Transcript is the what? A statement that summarizes all the accounting transactions that have taken place within the ministry on a monthly basis. On a monthly basis, we use that transcript to summarize all what has happened in terms of finance and expenditure in the ministry on a monthly basis. And it is the duty of what? And this will be submitted to the office of the Accountant General. Another name for the office of Accountant General, they call it what? Treasury Department. Any question, please? Okay. The next one, ensuring the safety and proper maintenance of all the government assets under his care. It must simply means that the person must manage the public asset entrusted to him or her in that ministry. If you dare misuse the word, the asset, the person is going to jail, but that is not applicable in Nigeria. What happened to Betta Edu? They just remove him from the seat. He's supposed to be in jail by now. Even though we don't know what has happened to her, because the way people are saying something relating to her, saying that she's not that kind of person before now, but power corrupt, absolute power corrupt, absolutely. Power corrupt, absolute power corrupt, absolutely. You don't know the kind of person, you don't know true picture of a person until the person is appointed in a position of power. That is when you can see the true picture of such a person. Why will a minister say that they should pay public fund, public money into our account, personal account? It is totally what? Wrong, and it's against the Constitution. Even though you want to steal, there is a way to steal, not that direct stealing. It is very, very glaring and not acceptable as the Constitution is concerned. Why would they pay public money into our account? The next one, ensure accurate collection and accounting for all the public money received and expended, which means you need to ensure that is what you have recorded in terms of the public fund in your care is well correct, and what you have spent out is also well correct. By the time they are checking the receipt, checking the vouchers, then they will ensure that what you have written or what you have provided is right. Then ensure prudency in expenditure of the public fund. Ensure that proper assessment of fees, rates, and charges are made where necessary. Simply means if you are meant to collect money, if you are meant to collect fee, if you are having a charges, you are doing the right thing. That is what it means. There is internal guide and regulations. There is high level of compliances when it comes to that in terms of collection and putting in place the accounting revenue. Ensure that any losses of funds are properly reported. Don't hide anything. Report what has happened. Ensure that all what revenue collected are compared with the budget estimate. Now, what we're saying here, there is what we call budget. There is what we call actual. The budget is what you plan for. Then you look at it, what is your actual? The difference is what we call variance. The difference is what we call variance. And you need to tell us the reason why there's a difference between the budget and the actual. Exactly. With a view highlighting the variance, positive or otherwise. Any question as regards to that before we go to the next one? Any question? My people, any question? Absent of no question, we move to the next officer. The next officer, as this part is concerned, is called sub-account officer. Sub-account officer. In accordance with the government regulation, this officer who is entrusted with the receipt, custody, and disbursement of public funds is required to maintain one of the recognized cash book together with the other books that may be required by the Accountant General, example, sub-treasurer of the Federation, Federal Pay Office, Police Pay Offices, Custom Area Pay Offices, Director of Finance and Account Office. Now, what we are saying is this. Sub-account officer is an officer who is in charge of managing other offices other than the ministry. Other offices other than what? Ministry. That is, all these federal pay offices, all these police pay offices, there are officers that are being stationed there to be monitoring their financial affairs. Those officers are referred to as sub-accounting officer. They are there to report to the Accountant General. But their offices is not a ministry, but they are also meant to have financial activities and financial records. That officer there is what we refer to as sub-accounting officer. What are the roles? What are the responsibilities given to this particular officer? What are the functions of this officer? Number one, ensure that the proper system of account or accounting system as prescribed by the Accountant General is established. To ensure that proper accounting system established by the Accountant General are properly followed. That is what it means. He must ensure that the accounting system put in place by the Accountant General are properly followed. Exercise supervision over the receipt of the public revenue and ensure prompt collection. It must ensure that there is a proper collection of all the money, the revenue entrusted to his or her offices. Properly bringing into account under the control, under the proper head and subhead of the estimate or other approved classification of all receipts with revenue and otherwise. Whether revenue and otherwise. What are we talking about here? Is just a minute English. You must ensure that the revenue that you are meant to collect are properly classified. Proper classification of revenue into head and subhead as stated by the Accountant General guidelines. Ensure that proper provision is made for safety keeping of the public fund, security, stamp, receipt, ticket, license, and other valuable documents. That all these documents are saved. Not that tomorrow you tell us that snake has swallowed the money. Monkey has carried the money. Fish has swallowed the entire offices. That is the system we are using in Nigeria. Okay. Are we together? Hello?
Yes, we are.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. The next one. Exercise supervision over all the officers under his authority who are entrusted with the receipt and expenditure of the public fund, and take precaution by putting in place the efficiency check against the occurrence of the fraud, embezzlement, and carelessness. Which means the officer must ensure that there is a proper collection and proper monitoring of expenditure, proper monitoring of expenditure of the public money, and ensure there is efficiency in what they are doing. In the case of fraud, he must also put in place provision and ensure that such will never reoccur again if it has happened before. Or if it has not happened, such will not happen at all. It's also there to look into charging in his account under the proper head and subhead. We also check it in terms of checking of all cash and stamp in his care to reconcile the amount. Simply means there must be reconciliation of accounts in all the assets put into his or her care. Reconciliation of accounts of all assets and books of accounts putting into his or her care. Is also there to bring into account the receipt or any cash or stamp found in excess. If there is excess, such should also be reported. Reported the excess. Any excess of their property should be reported. Making good make good any minor deficiency not to cause by theft or fraud, which means you must prevent what? Theft or fraud in cash or stamp. That particular officer is also charged by the Minister of Finance to prepare and maintain a cash book. That cash book is called Treasury Cash Book. The cash book, it is one of the main functions of sub-account officer as stated above in the maintenance of Treasury Cash Book in line with financial regulation of Act of 201. What is this particular account we're referring to? Is like a cash book. It has a debit side and also has what? Credit side. It has 17 columns. 17 columns. At this level, this particular cash book has not been tested, but it has been tested in the past. When it comes to what? 8 years, they've tested it times without number. People always find it very difficult to memorize the headings, but you can do it if you can practice very well. What are the headings? We have what we call TRV/date. What is the meaning of TRV? Treasury Revenue Voucher. Treasury Revenue Voucher. Then, after the Treasury Revenue Voucher or date, we have what we call from whom receivable. That is from the person you have collected the revenue from or the money from. Then the next one is what? Treasury Receipt Number. Treasury Receipt Number. We have what we call classification, head and subhead. Classification, head and subhead. The next one. Are you with me? Are you all? Okay. The next one is number of bank credit slip. That is the bank slip that you have used to pay in the money. Then you should tell us the slip number. The gross amount, what is the total figure you have paid? Maybe you have paid cash and you also pay check. The amount of cash you paid and the amount of cash you pay. That is why you also have what we call cash and bank column. Cash and bank column. We have the gross amount. The addition of the two will make up the gross amount. The next one is Treasury PV number. Treasury PV number. Departmental PV number. Department also have their PV number. To whom payable? Who do we pay? Classification into head and subhead. Classification into head and subhead. If it is check, you pay through check, we have the check number. We have what they call PE bank, the bank you have paid into. We also have gross amount. We have deduction or cash. If they make a deduction from the money you are meant to go and pay, maybe in terms of withholding tax, or government is meant to pay you, and there's a deduction they are meant to what? To take into consideration. Those deductions, they can call it a deduction or cash. They deduct it from the money they want to pay you in terms of the VAT, in terms of withholding tax. Then the balance will be paid to you. That balance, they call it what? Bank or net. Bank or net. Any question? Any question? Can you count the number of columns we have made mention of? We have treasury revenue number, or treasury receipt number, date or /date, from whom receivable making two. Treasury receipt number. We have what? Classification into head and subhead, number of bank credit slip, gross amount, cash, bank, treasury PV number, departmental PV number, to whom payable, classification, payee bank, check number, gross amount, deduction or cash, bank or net. That's 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 columns. Any question?
Alex, I just want to ask, with the roles of the sub-accountant, it seems like the officer rather is playing majorly the role of compliance.
Yes.
I want to say that he's acting as like in the capacity of an internal controller.
Additional?
Is acting in the capacity of an internal controller.
Yes. Is there to ensure high level of compliances and also to ensure there is internal control system. Has been designed or in terms of the guideline put in place by the accountant general. Such officer cannot deviate. Hello. Any question? Any other question? I think that's the Samuel that has a question just now. Is that Samuel?
No, sir. I'm not the one, sir. Hilary that has a question.
Okay. Thank you. Now, if there is no any other question, let's go to the next one. Revenue collector officer. Revenue collector officer. Revenue collector is another officer rather than the sub-account officer. This officer is charged with the responsibility of collecting a specific forms of revenue. Is also expected to keep a cash book. We call it revenue collector cash book. Let's see what this is. This is an officer apart from a sub-account officer who keeps official receipts and collects specified form of revenue on behalf of the government. He is expected to keep a cash book. The revenue collector must not spend money out of his collection. Is therefore has no account, is therefore has to account for the collection of the received intact, collection received intact. Which means this officer, no matter the situation, this officer must not spend a dime from the money. This officer cannot dip hand into the money collected and say that he has spent it on so amount. No, you are not charged with the responsibility of spending money from the money collected. You can only collect, you can't spend. That is what the Constitution says. You dare not touch the money. What are the functions of the revenue collector officer? What are the functions of revenue collector officer? Number one, exercising supervision over the receipt of the public revenue and ensure their prompt lodgement into the account, into the bank. Any money collected by this officer, he must ensure that all this money are properly collected and must be what? Accounted for and paid into the bank account immediately. Number two, promptly reflect in the account under the proper head and subhead of the estimate and all money collected by him on behalf of the government. What we are saying is this: revenue also have what we call head and subhead. There are different head and subhead in revenue. There are different head and subhead in revenue. I said it in the first class. That's what we call head and subhead. What is head? It is the number attached to a particular transaction. Why subhead is the subdivision of that particular transaction. This applicable to what? To ministry, is applicable to revenue, is applicable to what we refer to as expenditure. Taking for instance, we have what we call taxation. Is that clear? Nigerian tax is classified into major two. What are the two types of tax we are referring to when we say Nigerian tax is classified into two? What are they? What are the two classes of tax in Nigeria? Don't tell me you don't know it too. There are two classes of tax as Nigerian constitution is concerned, as Nigerian system is concerned. What are they? We have direct tax and we have indirect tax. We have direct tax and we have what? Indirect tax. What is direct tax? What is indirect tax? What is the direct? What's the meaning of direct tax?
Direct tax is like a tax that is chargeable to individuals' income or profit.
Okay. I agree with you, but that's not the full meaning of the direct tax. When we look at it, we charge it to people's what? Income. But is that the meaning? Direct tax are those taxes levied on profits, properties, or on individual income. Levied on profit or individuals' what? Income or properties. In which the person paying this tax can assess the amount payable as tax, and the burden of the tax cannot be shifted. The burden of that tax cannot be shifted. That's the direct tax. Can you shift your personal income tax?
No, sir.
Can you shift the burden of the personal income tax to anybody? Can you shift the burden of personal income tax to anybody? My people is not saying anything. Look at what we're saying. What personal income tax is the same thing as your port, pay as you earn. If you pay the money at the end of the month from you, if they pay the money from your salary, did you shift the burden of that tax to anybody? No. If you pay CIT, company income tax, which is the profit you made at the end of the year, government is now collecting 30% of it. Did you shift that burden to anybody? No. That one too cannot be shifted to anybody. You bear the burden alone. Petroleum profit tax cannot be shifted to anybody. The burden on capital gain tax cannot be shifted to anybody. Those are personal what? Income tax. Educational tax cannot be shifted to anybody. But looking at it from what we call indirect tax, this is the tax levied on goods and services. Tax levies on goods and services, in which the taxpayer cannot assess the amount payable as tax, and the burden of the tax can be what? Shifted to the what? To the final consumer or to the buyer. An importer might find it very difficult to know how much they have charged as tax or tariff on the goods. He can only know the amount paid, but based on calculation, he might not be able to assess it. But at the end of the day, he's going to add it as part of the what? Cost of purchase. That's the reason why anytime government want to change pattern of consumption of the people living in a state, government want to change pattern of consumption of people living in a state, what do? They will increase what? The tax rate on imported products. Immediately the tax rate is being increased, what will happen? People will leave the imported goods because the price will be too high. Then they will start consuming local made what? Goods. That is what is happening presently as production of rice is concerned. The price attached to what? In foreign rice is said to be too much, 70, 80,000. But the local goods, the local rice can still be at rate of what? 40, 30 something thousand. People still go for what? Local rice than going for what? Foreign rice. Any question? Example of indirect tax, we have what we call value-added tax, ad valorem tax. That one has been cancelled. Stamp duty, imported, we have what we call tariff or imported what? Duties. Sorry, import duties, export duties, excise duties. All these are examples of what we still meant to look at it in the future where necessary. But just for you to understand what they call what, all those taxes under the direct tax, we call it Ed 2. Indirect tax is Ed 1 in the what? In the federation account by tax by what? Revenue classification. Direct tax is Ed 2. Indirect tax is Ed 1. Under that, we have sub-Ed. Those sub-Ed, their number are what? Various taxes under what? Indirect tax. And other related what? Revenue. All these are what we are looking at. Whose officer is in charge of recording all this, collecting this particular money? How do you meant to record it in terms of what? Constitution. What does the Financial Regulation Act says about the classification? Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Number 3, we say, saying the proper provision is made for custody of public funds, securities, and other what? Other assets put into his care. Supervision of all the officers under his authority who are entrusted with the receipt, custody, and distribution of public fund, disbursement of public fund. All these are also meant to be carried out by the officer, revenue collector officer. Maintenance of efficiency, internal check against occurrence of malpractice. Malpractice. He must ensure anything that has to do that has leads to malpractice are being properly what checked, and such is not what coming up. Then checking all cash and stamps. Cash, stamp in his care. Agree the amount with balances in the cash book. What we're saying here is there to reconcile the cash book and all other assets under his care. Is there to what? To reconcile and make sure the physical figure also tally with the one in the cash book. You have collected cash, you have some stamp you have issued out. In that process, at any point in time, the physical count must also be the same thing with the what? With the record. Where there is excess, you must what? State the excess. Making good any minor deficit which is not caused by theft or fraud. Report accordingly in writing. Appropriate officer, e.g., Minister of Finance, you need to report to such a person stating what has happened if it is not fraud or theft. And where there is excess, you need to state that there is what? Excess. It might not be excess. It might be an issue of what? Mistake in the process. But as an officer in charge, you must be able to state and give us the reason why it is like that. The cash book that is meant to be managed by the revenue collector officer has 8 columns. It has what? 8 columns. It is called what? Revenue collector cash book. It has date. This particular cash book has been tested about 4 times or 3 times now. We don't know what will happen in this your era. And other related questions they normally ask here. Let me also make what? Try to clear the hair in this situation. We have what we call the date. We have revenue receipt number. We have classification head and subhead. We have what we call from whom receivable. We have amount. We have date. We have treasury receipt number, and we have amount. The officer in charge is going to manage revenue receipt number. Anytime he went to go and remit the money in the treasury department, they will issue to him or her treasury receipt number. That's the difference between the two. Is the one meant to issue out this one to the office, to the person that have paid what for a particular revenue, is going to issue revenue receipt number to such officer. Why is going to collect treasury receipt number from the treasury department or the accountant general's office anytime he try to remit or went there for remittance of money. Any question? Now, how do the procedure for the treatment of receipt cancellation of receipts? How do we treat cancellation of receipts? Are we saying we don't have idea of how we are meant to treat cancellation of receipts? Okay. Number 1. In the case of any error or mistake on the surface or on a leaf of the words of that receipt, such receipt should be cancelled by drawing a two transverse line across the face of the receipt. 2, such receipt must not be detached. And such receipt the number on such receipt will be omitted in the process of recording in the cash book. Such will be omitted. In the process of investigation or checking, they will check and ask, why your receipts are not in a serial, are not serially what? Recorded. You can now say that there is an error in the process. They will go and check whether that leaflet or that particular receipt is in the what? Receipt booklet. If not there, then they will summon you for query. If it is there, you are okay, you are good to go. Any question, please? Any question?
No, sir.
Are we all sure? Love it. Any question? Esther, any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Ify, any question? Aikali, any question?
No, sir.
Samuel?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Muibat, any question from your end? Taylor, any question?
No, sir.
William, any question? Okay. Absent of no question, let's move to the next one. Imprest order officer. Imprest order officer. This is another officer rather than revenue collector officer. Rather than revenue collector officer, who is charged with responsibility of disbursing public fund on minor what expenses. Let's look at what the record is saying. According to government regulation, this is an officer other than sub-account officer who is charged with disbursement of public money, whose vouchers cannot be presented immediately to sub-account officer. He has to keep an imprest cash book. Simply means this officer is meant to manage imprest cash book. Imprest system. What does it mean? Imprest system. An imprest system is defined as a small amount of money set aside to meet petty cash payments, the voucher of which cannot be presented to sub-account officer immediately. That is, imprest system is the process of setting aside small amount of money or certain amount of money in order to manage the petty expenses. That's another simple definition. Setting aside certain amount of money based on authorization of the accountant general. Based on the authorization of the accountant general, that officer can that ministry can start using imprest system. An imprest holder is therefore a petty cashier who handles such float of money and keep necessary record for restoration to the earlier amount granted at the appropriate time. What are we talking about there? Is there to remit the balance and also to give account of what he or she has spent the money on. Are you with me? We have majorly two types of what? Two impress. Majorly two types of impress. We call special impress. Standing impress, and we have what we call special impress. Are you with me? This impress operates from the commencement of the commencement to the end of the year, of the financial year. January to December each year. On the last day of the year, the account is rendered and all unspent balances last received. Simply means you are meant to remit the balance of what you don't spend from the impress. Why the special impress is impress created for a specific purpose. Immediately the purpose has been achieved, that particular impress moves to an end. Let's see what they are saying here. They said this impress is operate from the commencement of financial year until the objective for such is set up and has been achieved. Upon the attachment of such objective, an account will be rendered and all unused balance shall be lapsed. That's the difference between the two impress. Condition for the operation of impress. These are the area where question always come out. On what basis can you use what? Impress. A, any ministry which intend of operate an impress has to apply in writing to the Accountant General of the Federation, stating the amount and the purpose for which is required. You must write to the Accountant General, you must tell the Accountant General the purpose, why do you need what? Impress, and the amount you think you want to be using as your floats. Immediately the Accountant General has approved, and the account officer of that ministry has also what, or some state ministry has approved that, they will issue what we call impress after the Minister of Finance has conveyed the authorization in the annual general impress warrant. We will discuss warrants in future. It's a topic on its own. When we get there, we'll discuss it. There is what we call annual general warrant, saying that you can go ahead for this particular transaction. Then this officer is there to manage what? Impress holder cash book. Impress holders cash book. This has to do with what? What are the things you are meant to see in your impress holder cash book? We have the date, we have reimbursement details, we have number of bank credit slip, we have cash and bank, that's the debit side. At the credit side, we have what we call date, to whom payable, number of bank credit slip. We have what we call check number, we have cash, we have balances, we have what we call analysis column. When we are solving questions, we are going to solve question on it because there is a particular area there. You also need to have a better idea of how to balance impress in a normal standard, not the one you are using in your office. You don't remit, they will balance up in your office. Any questions relating to impress holder cash book, or impress what? Impress system, or impress holder officer, before we move to the last one? The officer is charged with the responsibility of monitoring what? Government expenditure or public expenditure to ensure that there is no extra budgetary pending. This officer is also there to manage a book called vote book. You will see it when as we are going. What are the functions of this officer? Supervision of government expenditure and ensure that there is no payment is made without proper authorization. No payments made without what? Proper authorization. Fund charge into the account under the head and subhead all the disbursements. You must ensure that all disbursements are being classified under normal head and their subhead. You must also ensure that all books are correctly posted and kept up to date. The books are properly kept up to date. Producing, when required by Director General and Auditor General, all cash, stamp, and other related documents and assets under his care as a custodian. Ensure that funds are available under the appropriate head and subhead to meet payment of a specific voucher. There must not a particular period of time that you must be out of fund under a particular head or subhead. Immediately the expenditure mature, you need to pay before it turns out to be liability on government. Effective monitoring of government expenditure. Ensure that there is no extra budgetary spending. Ensure that there is adequate security over the public fund. Maintain vote book. It's also there to maintain vote book. What is vote book? Vote book is a memorandum book of accounts. Memorandum book of accounts used for monitoring and ensuring there is no extraordinary spending. What are the reasons for vote book? Reasons for vote book. In the proper head and subhead to ensure there is no extra budgetary spending. This is the example. This is how vote books look like. This is the format for vote book. Vote book authorized appropriation. We have the head, we have subhead, we have service, we have AGW, annual general warrant. That is what they release for the money. Authority to incur expenditure. We have what we call liability. This one don't have debit and credit. We have expenditure liability side. Now we have how many columns? 15 columns. We have line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, line 7, line 8, line 9, line 10, line 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. In line 1, we call it line number. We number it 1, 2, 3. In line 2, we have dates. Line 3, we have PV number. That is payment voucher number. Line 4, we have particulars. That is the purpose of that transaction or the purpose of that payment. Then we have payments. We have cumulative payments. We have balance. We have liability reference. When you purchase, you have not made payment. That is why we call liability reference. We have liability incurred, the amount you are owing. Liability cleared, if you have paid for that liability. Outstanding liability, how much are you owing? Remark whether you have a supply or there is a payment you have made. The uncommitted balance. The line 14 and line 15 are basically meant for explanation. What are the terminologies? Definition of terms under this part. We have what we call the line account. Below the line are those transactions that are not traceable to the budget. These are the accounts of the Federation, of which at the time of preparation, receivable and expenditure incurable cannot be reasonably ascertained. They are, that's why we said budget. Move the line. These are revenue or expenditure items that are traceable prepared. In the time of preparing budget.
Yes, sir.
What do we mean by federal pay offices? We've explained that this is federal pay officer. This is an officer who is charged of the federal pay offices in the state. He performs the same function of the sub-account officer. However, although sub-account officer is at the headquarters of each ministry, the federal pay officer handle the processing of all financial transactions between the federal and state government, which means indirectly the role that the federal pay officer and sub-account officer play the same role. We have financial regulation, accounting manual. They are rules governing the management of public fund. These rules deal with procedure to be adopted for the receipt and disbursement of the public fund. We have budgetary control. All these are also a topic to be discussed on their own in the future. The concept simply states that government should not undertake any action without a prior budget for it. This one is explaining what we call commitment basis. This is explaining what commitment basis. The concept assumes that all government revenue and expenditure must be projected for. We have what we call token votes, which make provision for head and subhead. We have account current, that is the balance from a particular account to another account. We have children separation domicile allowance. That is the allowance paid to an officer who is being transferred from where the family is resident to another area, or the allowance paid to the officer who is being separated from the family for business assignment. If it's an expatriate officer, where an officer is being posted to serve overseas, they will pay domicile allowance. These are the officer as public sector accounting is concerned, public finance officer. Any questions so far, please? Any question?
No question,
Any
sir.
question? Absent of no question at this junction, I will call it a day. I forwarded this material. Hello?
Okay, I just want to come in with respect
Okay.
to lecture materials and recorded videos. We seem not to be getting these things, and of course,
Speak up,
we
please.
don't have it. Like previous lectures,
Yes.
personally, we don't have the personal. I don't have. I wouldn't know about others.
You don't have
I
the
don't
previous
have them.
lecture? Previous
Yes,
lecture
I
notes?
don't. Yes, I
I will
don't.
refer to the group. Don't worry. That one is
Okay,
it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
I
With
will.
the videos to help us. Thank you.
I will do that. Don't worry. Next class, I might not be the person to take it. Might be my second colleague that is going to come on board. Do you understand? But coming for next class, we need to solve all these questions one after the other, especially the calculation part, to take us to prepare us against the examiner's test. We might not solve all the questions, but we're going to pick it one after the other relating to those areas that are very necessary and see what we are meant to do. Do we understand? Before going to the next topic. Absent of no question, I would like to end the class here.
Thank you, sir.
sir.
Your
Thank you,
sleep.
sir. We await the materials,
Have
sir.
a sweet dream.
Thank
You
you,
are
sir.
all welcome. Okay, no problem. I will forward it to the group. Thank you. Bye for now.